Hi, we're the McLean Environthon team, and this is our project Bring Back the Stars, where we investigated the impacts of light pollution and how we as a community can restore our nighttime ecology through local grassroots initiatives. So we live in the Pimmet Run watershed, which is part of the larger Chesapeake Bay watershed. And this is our team. So to start off, light pollution is a serious issue as it disrupts our ecosystems and our community, in particular due to the commonly installed bright LED lights that make this issue worse. So we first investigated light pollution at our local high school using kids from our library. And for context, these are some images of our local high school at night. So in addition, we use this phone app called the Dark Sky Meter to measure and take note of light pollution in different areas. And we submitted this data to Dark Sky International, a nonprofit organization with global authority to reduce light pollution. And so for our project, we sent invitations to all levels of our school pyramid and asked them to bring their families and neighbors to this event. We achieved an attendance of approximately 70 people, and we worked with journalists at McLean High School to publicize this event to our school. So our planning began last September as we dove into this issue of light pollution. And as mentioned previously, we measured light pollution with a kid, and then we approached the Fairfax County government to make a change. We also met and engaged partners such as the Northern Virginia Astronomy Club, the Bird Alliance, and Dark Skies International. However, in October, we learned that there are already many laws in place and that the real issue centered around educating our community rather than getting additional government legislation. And so at that time, we also conducted interviews on the impacts of our local light pollution on local residents around our area. And then we held meetings with Longfellow Middle School and we scheduled a joint outreach event for January, preparing stargazing, games, and baked events so that whole families could come and learn about this issue. So for our premiere event on January 15th, 2026, we hosted three sets of speakers, the Longfellow students, the Northern Virginia Bird Alliance, and Fairfax County leaders. And we also included other partners such as the Longfellow Gardening Club, the Northern Virginia Astronomy Club, and an astrogeologist as well. So our team advertised this event through flyers as seen on this slide for advertising. And as seen on the next slide, we also created a one-page simple flyers for directions on how every community member could use simple best lighting practices to reduce this issue.
Yeah, so this is our budget. And at the event, we attracted student interest by promoting learning about stars and planets and outer space with professional astronomers who actually brought real telescopes. Here are some images of our partners. And after the event, though, our efforts against light pollution did not stop, of course. After this event, we continued to make a difference in the community, starting with we invited a Fairfax County Deputy Director of Code Compliance, Ben Aiken, to take a look at our school's lighting, which we thought was not following best lighting practices. We also approached the school administration to ask about the lighting schedule for the football field, which was not being followed. And we learned from Ben several methods to create changes in our school's lighting. One of which that we're going to go into further detail is to buy these strips to put on the lights to make them darker. And with the money we might win from this competition, we think we're going to donate these strips to the school and local libraries. Since our proposal, we have reached out to our school, the local school system, the local government, and the state government, and the federal government, and we've asked them to educate and promote dark skies regulations. We also continue to keep our partners from the events posted on our progress, and we are coordinating with them for potential future events.
Reviewing previous judges' comments, we love the idea of creating direct change, which is where we're going to the aspect of attaining these actual light strips and testing them to see if they're effective, especially effective in wide use. Another idea we loved was how we actually plan to measure the success, where we're looking at specifically reaching, so far we've reached hundreds of people, asking them how they're seeing this effect change. And we're also using tools to measure and track how our schools and other counties and even our county are following best lighting practices. Looking at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we're targeting a few goals, specifically Goal 13, climate change, by assisting biodiversity making our ecosystem more resilient to climate change. Goal 10, economic and class inequality, as much uncontrolled light pollution occurs in areas that are economically disadvantaged. Goals 11 and 12, as sustainable communities and responsible consumption, light pollution is the worst. It has one of the worst effects on our planet. And goals 14 and 15, a life below water and a life on land, as the night is its own ecosystem, and we need to do all we can to protect this. Thank you so much. Here are our sources, and we thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Oh my gosh, that was fantastic. Wow. Okay. I'm amazed how many SDGs y'all connected to. And I know Gitanjali is probably gonna highlight that more. Fantastic. I'm gonna let the judges ask some questions and follow-up comments, and then we'll hold a little space for reflection.
Yes, thank you for such a thoughtful presentation. And I really appreciate the range of people you're communicating with to understand like what it means to have different levels of light pollution and light exposure and the impacts. You did cover so many great things in this presentation. I'm curious, as you were learning about light pollution in your community, what were some of the most surprising and notable impacts that you discovered on biodiversity, on people, whatever?
Well, to start off, I think it was really surprising personally to kind of discover how prevalent the issue of light pollution is in our area. So we live pretty close to Tyson's Corner, which is basically kind of a small city. So I think we knew that light pollution was a really prevalent issue there. But when we were using our light tools and walking around our own local high school, it was just really shocking to discover that the shades of the lights and the intensity of the lights were, firstly, they were not following the regulations set by the county or the state, and that they were also not following the simple they weren't also following the schedule that they stated, so that it was that the issue was kind of the issue with the light pollution was that when following a schedule, if it's turned off at a certain time, it can greatly reduce the issues, but we found out that that also wasn't happening. So not only were the shades and the intensity of the light pollution greatly detrimental to a lot of the neighborhood people that we interviewed as well, who were complaining, and they were saying that it was really impacting their sleep, and because light pollution has really detrimental effects on heart disease and heart attacks. There's actually research that's been done that shows that it spikes those for humans as well. So we can only imagine the impacts on animals and biodiversity as they're even more detrimentally impacted because they don't have homes to protect them or people to advocate for them at all, which is why biodiversity was one of the things that we focused on resolving and part of the reason why this issue is so concerning.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job to everyone. Nice presentation. So I kind of like how you connected light pollution to equity. So in the course of your presentation, one thing which I took was the fact that you noted that economically disadvantaged areas suffer more from uncontrolled light pollution, and which shows a real kind of a social awareness beyond just save the environment slogan, you see. So also another thing which I picked, which I think I really appreciate from your presentation, is the fact that you talked about night as an ecosystem framing. That idea on its own is like a genuinely compelling original way to frame issues for students at this your level. So I really appreciate that. Good job. So for my question, I wanted to ask, you talked about, you mentioned tracking whether schools and counting are following the best lighting practices. So for you, what does your data show so far? And has there been anything that surprises you guys?
Yeah, so that is a great question, first of all. So importantly, looking at our community, there are some things that we have to kind of recognize. First is that best practices, they don't necessarily follow exactly what the regulations are. because regulations for light pollution, they are very varied across the state. And because we're kind of realizing this problem and recognizing this, much light that was installed in the past can still be kept simply because it was installed earlier in time, even though if it was installed right now, it would be against the regulations. So specifically looking at our community, especially our schools, which themselves are not bound to the exact same regulations that are put in place to the everyday community, you're seeing a lot more ignorance to these best management practices simply because of where we're looking and when these lights were installed. So for us, this is very prevalent and very like recognizable because even though we know where we can do, and even the law, they recognize that right now we can do better simply because the date when these lights were installed, they are allowed to continue running. And obviously you cannot simply just replace these lights because looking at football stadium lights, replacing them would be an incredible feat with millions of fundings that we don't even have. Looking at our schools who are struggling to keep like languages alive, we have to kind of bypass that in a way where we are able to implement our solutions in a way that it won't be detrimental to the community in other ways. That's where we're looking at education, kind of using our school as a network for education, building our pathway, finding ways where we can get to the community itself. And then we're also looking at these potential solutions that are temporary and less expensive, where we go to obtaining these field trips and testing them, not only on our schools and our specific community, but going through all these other live areas and trying to see if we can make this effort and put this direct change into a bigger area than just our school.
If I may add, I won't be too long, sorry. But for a lot of houses and a lot of buildings that even though they might follow the code, or sorry, no, they don't follow the code, and they were also installed after the code was, put into place. A lot of the times they might just stay because, it's really a lot of the government is understaffed and they don't have enough people to, ensure that these people are following the rules. So as we talked to Ben, as I mentioned, Ben Aiken, he's a deputy director of code compliance. He's just he has a lot of work to do and simply doesn't have enough time to go to every single house that doesn't follow these rules and tell them to stop.
Awesome job, guys. I don't have any questions for you. I just wanted to say that I'm very, very impressed by your presentation. It was very well thought out, very well executed. I was very impressed with your community partnerships and your outreach event, and even thinking about like the little things like making 75 to 100 cookies, like just thinking about like the little tiny details. I really appreciated. So, great job.
Thank you so much.